Hello, welcome to the Neighborhood Conversations, where we have inclusive conversations with inclusive individuals. I'm so happy to be in your neighborhood today. It's your boy Templeton Sawyer, and we're here today talking about mental health. Mental health is a very important topic, and I'm so happy that we have experts in the room. Brad Rowe from Healthy Minds Cooperative and Susan Kilbride Roper, who's a Jasper consultant and also recovery consultant. Welcome to you both. How are you doing today?
Just fabulous, and thank you for allowing us this opportunity to have this hopefully wonderful conversation.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. Susan, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. I was honored to have been asked to participate in this broadcast and with Brad Rowe. So
Yeah,
we've known one another for a little while now, and so I'm going to really enjoy this. So thank you for inviting me.
awesome, awesome. Brad, Susan, it's so happy to have you. We're going to have a conversation today about mental health, and you both are experts in this field. And I'm so happy to have both of you join the table. And so I'm going to just get into the conversation and start my question. What is mental health and why is it important? And I'm going to start with Brad, and then I'm going to go to Susan.
So that's a an easy and a difficult question to answer because I think most times when we think of mental health, we think of having a mental disorder. When in fact, mental health is really the full spectrum of our psychological, emotional, and our social well-being. It's really everything that we have, the quality of life, our sense of fulfillment, our engagement, our happiness. And so having positive mental health and being having mental well-being allows us to have a rich and full life.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's important. Susan, would you like to elaborate on that for sure?
Sure. Well, as has commonly been said, I think the Canadian Mental Health Association first came up with the phrase "there is no health without mental health." Um, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and the Public Health Agency of Canada has a really good definition of mental health. Do you mind if I read it? It's not too long.
Yes. No, go
I
ahead.
tried to
Go ahead.
memorize it, and it just didn't. On the page, it's
Mhm.
so much better. It's the capacity of each and all of us to feel, think, and act in ways that enhance our ability to enjoy life and deal with the challenges we face. It is a positive sense of emotional and spiritual well being that respects the importance of culture, equity, social justice, interconnections, and personal dignity. So that's the Public Health Agency of Canada.
Wow.
So,
That's really important to know. Yeah. Did you want to say something else, Susan? So sorry for interrupting.
no, I was going to do a commercial for mental health first aid because that's where the actual quote came from, was the
Awesome.
learner's manual. Yeah.
Oh, that's really awesome. We have a lot of persons facing mental health today, and I too have faced mental health. And knowing how to cope through that, and also knowing how to support other individuals, such as my family members, my friends, my coworkers, just trusted individuals who I can support. And so this next question, Susan, I'm gonna ask you to lead the way in this question. How can I tell if someone has a mental health problem? Like how can I be aware of that? So Susan, you can go ahead.
There's a little tool called ALGE, ALGEE. It's an acronym for assess, assess whether or not somebody is living with a mental illness. There are or dealing with an incidence or of mental illness. And ALGE assess risk of suicide or harm. That's what you should do first when you think somebody's living with a mental illness. So see how serious the situation is. The second thing that you do is listen non-judgmentally. So
Mm,
whatever the person says,
right.
um, listen non-judgmentally. Do not form any opinions. You have to sort of go through all of the actions of the ALGE plan. Give comfort and advice that you've practiced up on from your mental health first aid.
Right.
The most important part, I don't have to go by Algie, but listening non-judgmentally, assess the situation based on hopefully prior knowledge of how the types of illnesses or addiction issues that someone may face, and encourage the person to get help. That's the 2 E's at the end. First, find out what sorts of supports that they have. Do they have friends, family members, peer supporters? And encourage them, the second E, encourage them to get help. So they can do that. There are several, since we suffered a real crises with people living with mental health issues throughout the pandemic due to isolation and all of the difficulties that people went through. We have a lot of phone numbers across the country, but the one that I know, 4298167, is the Mental Health Mobile Crisis Unit. So if you have any concerns, they will talk to you, they will speak to the person. But if you have anything that you're concerned about an individual, there are all kinds of signs and symptoms you can learn about just by taking this simple course. And you can sort of do your own assessment, and then you can call one of the phone numbers if the person is not comfortable in speaking on the phone themselves.
Wow. Thank you so much, Susan. Assessing, it's really important. And those are different types of areas that we should assess. And I really enjoyed hearing that for sure. And that'll help me to assess when someone's going through a mental health crisis or experiencing mental health. Brad, I want to hear from you. What do you have to add to this conversation?
For me, and what I've learned, and sort of advice that I give to supporters, carers, family members, is it's really looking at mood and behavior changes and the persistence of that.
Right.
We all have bad days,
Right.
but when my bad day becomes a week, then there may be some concern. If I'm sleeping in later than normal, and again it's every day, or I stop doing things that I like, or if I'm more irritable, or if I'm more distant. And again, it's not for me, I think it's the reality of we all go through all of these things and we experience these things, but it's the duration that occurs that may raise some cause for concern. Again, that friend who you used to go for a coffee with every 2 weeks now doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Or that person who's not responding regularly to your texts, or the family member who is suddenly spending a lot of time in their room and they don't seem to be doing the things that they normally regularly would enjoy.
Yeah.
So it's really those, paying attention to if there is something that is a bit different or unusual for how they're behaving, and how long it is. And then it's also, I think, the reality of we're always afraid to have that conversation.
Yeah.
We're terrified because if I ask, then they're going to feel like I'm picking on them. And I find, if we approach it like Susan was saying, with compassion, and I always find as well, like, it's about me and what I'm seeing. So it's not about them. So it would be saying to them, I'm noticing this and I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It's not you're doing this. Yeah. Again, Susan mentioned the non-judgmental aspect of things. So it's not about saying, hey, you're doing something wrong. It's I'm noticing that this is happening and I'm curious or I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I look forward to my family's security in the future. That's the main goal as a father.
The empowerment from changing careers has really just made me want to get out of bed in the morning.
I'm looking forward to growing my business. So I want to hire people like I was hired. I want to give guys that chance.
Il me fera plaisir de continuer à travailler avec les immigrants francophones en Nouvelle-Écosse.
I'm looking forward to the financial freedom that I never had before.
So
That's really important. And I had a friend who dealt with mental health a few weeks ago, and it was just hard for her to experience them going through that. And here, all I could do is just support and just give kind words and gesture, but also giving that space to allow them to grow, and also to allow them to be friends, because they're far away from me. So it's not that they're like in the province, they're like all the way in Ontario area. So it was like that was like hard for me to say, oh, I want to be like right there. And so encouraging them to go out and be with other friends, and to allow them to try to do things like that, that's like really important. And I thank you. Yeah, that's important. Yeah. Yeah.
and I think another big thing, especially when Susan was mentioning, if you think somebody may be experiencing a level of distress, is to be very open about it and very candid.
Yeah.
You know, coaching things and you know, quite honestly, just coming out and saying, "I'm concerned, I'm worried," and again, in the event of a crisis,
Hmm.
you know, uh, talking very open about it. Like Susan mentioned, mental health first aid.
Yeah.
And the fact that it is that actual are you feeling suicidal, are you you know do you have a plan, being very open. And I know there's always that fear that, oh, if I mention
Yeah.
it, it's going to promote it.
Yeah.
And the reality, like in the hundreds and hundreds of conversations where I've brought that up with people, it's been a door opener. And that reality that somebody can actually express what they're feeling. So if you're in that sort of crisis kind of mode, or if you feel that somebody's feeling that, be very open, be
Yeah.
very candid about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really refreshing to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that. I move on to to my next question that speaks about curing mental illness. Which way is better for treating a health condition, therapy or medication, like, or both? Like how do people treat mental illness? And Susan, I'm gonna no, Brad, sorry, I'm gonna allow you to answer that question first, and then I'm going to go to Susan
Okay.
to answer that question second. Yeah, yeah,
So I think, when I think there's a continuum and multiple layers with that. We talk about medication and therapy and which is best and what's the combination that's best. And I think, the reality is that I think all of these things work best together. Um, and more importantly, I think it's about what works best for you, what you find
yeah.
helpful. You know, you know, I know people who consider going for a jog as therapy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I know people have fears about you know
Yeah,
medication
yeah,
and so for me it's about, I guess, there isn't one
yeah,
answer. And it's again, it's on a continuum, because there are times where maybe medication is that key to help you reach a certain place, and then therapy, and then you know, your own personal wellness plan and your own personal engagement.
right.
So it's a lot, it's so many. But I think the one thing that I've learned is that you know first off, this is a health condition,
Right.
but it's also a chronic health condition.
Hmm.
A lot of times we'll seek help for the acute symptoms we're experiencing. And then when they're reduced, we just sort of dive back into the life that we had before, and that probably helped to exacerbate or even create some of that intense experience we've
Right.
had.
Right.
So I think, like, for me, it's oh and I don't want to go off into a big rant on
No.
this,
Good.
but it's really, like sitting down and saying, this is what I feel I'm missing, or this is what's happening, and what can I do to address it? So it's about me addressing my quality of life. And, I may find that, what, taking this medication gives me the peace that I need to be able to engage and have what I define as as quality in my life.
Right.
For others, medication may not be, but it's, again, it's, engaging in, Tai Chi, or exploring the art, or, going for a jog. And so it's really a little bit of everything, but it absolutely has to be what brings you and allows you to have that quality in your life.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. Susan, what do you think about this question?
Um, okay, from my own experience, I live with a mental illness. I live with bipolar disorder. So my experience in and 1% of the population lives with bipolar disorder. So there's 1% that combine, most often combine medication and therapy. Therapy is hard to get, though, sometimes, very hard to get. But a combination of both, but really the most important thing, aside from, and Brad said it perfectly, quality of life. Quality of life comes first, and then medication maybe second, therapy to get to the root of things. If you have something like post-traumatic stress disorder or borderline personality disorder, therapy is really, really important. And most likely, if you have the symptoms of anxiety or depression that go along with that condition, then medication is going to help with that. In other cases, therapy is not helpful at all. The person has dealt with all of their issues that are just kind of hard to live with. And so,
Yeah.
what Brad was talking about, the wellness techniques, really, really important. Really important. So, it all depends, I guess, on the nature of the mental illness.
Yeah, that's so important. I talk about healthy therapy, lifestyle all the time, going for walks. That's like something that I love to do if I'm feeling a bit stressed, or a bit depressed. I tend to go for a walk. I am so fortunate that I live close to the office, so I walk to the office every day, and I feel I actually saw that as a healthy mental health journey for me, because it gives me time to collect my thoughts in the morning, to be with myself in the morning, and actually think about what I want to do, and how I want to make an impact for the day. And then even if I'm feeling a bit down or something, I would stay at the office for a little bit and then walk, because if I'm feeling down, I say, okay, I'm going to walk this off, because I'm not going to get in the
Yeah.
car, or I'm not going to tell my friends to pick me up. I'm going to walk, because it's a journey. And it's helpful, as I mean, for
Yeah.
me, it's been very helpful for me, because I don't know how to tell you how healthy life is so good in hiking, exploring with nature. And that's what I love about Nova Scotia, is that it has like those nature areas for you to connect with nature, and connect with all the surrounding things, and the air of it brings the healthiness of your mental health. And I love that. Yeah, yeah, that's so good. Yeah,
No, definitely, and I think that is the I think the prime example of, you found something that really speaks to
yeah,
you, that lifts you to a place that you want to
yeah.
be. And, as you were saying that, I was just thinking, in the men's group, there's a guy who, the thought of hiking would be well, I'm not going to say what he would say,
Yeah.
but it's the reality of, it's what works for you.
Right, right. Right. And that's important. And that actually leads me to my next question. When can one be assured that their mental health is affecting their personal, work, or academic life? And Susan, I'm gonna go with you with this question, and then I'm gonna go to Brad.
Sure. Um, Speaking of the word sure, I I have been unsure.
Mm-hmm.
I've been unsure. A lot of people are unsure and cannot see um, how a possibility of mental illness is impacting their life. It takes kind of outsiders sometimes to help point
Mm-hmm.
things out to them. So a big thing for me and for other people I know is the sleep changes, lack of sleep. If
Mm-hmm.
that changes, sleeping too much, sleeping too little, that's a biggie. Something as simple as eating too much, eating too little. What if the eating too little is a return to an eating disorder?
Right.
Um, uh, Sleeping, eating, isolation. We've been dealing that word is mega huge these days,
Yeah.
since the
Yeah.
pandemic. And so isolation, once you start isolating away from friends and family because you don't want to have to deal with what's going on inside you in front of other people, it's very difficult to be around other people.
Right.
So that's chosen isolation. So yeah, I have to say, you have to be open to listening to other people and people who are not the people who are trying to help you, who are kind of not being listened to. They have to find another way to communicate um, with a person to make them be concerned. Here are the signs and symptoms of someone not doing well, and so the sleeping, the eating, the lack of ability to pay attention, lack of focus. Yeah, so those things.
Yeah. Very important. Thank you so much for sharing that, Susan. Brad, what do you think?
Welcome.
Well, I always, when I'm working with somebody, I always approach from the perspective of what's poking you,
Mm.
because, you know, if you're going through life and everything seems good, then for you it is. You
Yeah.
know, despite what might be happening outside, again, Susan mentioned, like, say, somebody mentioning something. Well, if we choose to accept that and agree it, then that's the thing that's poking us, that, hey, I'm doing something that this person is noticing. And for me, I've sort of realized that, I spent most of my life in an unhealthy place without knowing it,
Mm.
because we are these incredibly strong and resilient people, and we can take a lot, and we keep going forward and forward. And you know we also live in a world where everything isn't easy. So we have to find a job and we have to work, and a lot of people don't like their job, or there are relationships don't work for multiple reasons. So until we go through all these things that can really be an identifier of me struggling.
Yeah.
But until I recognize it as a
Yeah.
challenge and something that's troubling me,
Right.
like like for example, I am terrified of heights.
Mm-hmm.
I To the point where there are times where if I stand up on like a step ladder, I can feel a little vertigo. I can't walk across the bridge, one of the bridges here, because it's too much. Now, some people could say that that's a phobia that should be addressed, but for me, it's like, I just don't walk across the bridge, and I'm never going to get a job cleaning windows in an office tower.
Mm.
And it has no other impact on my life.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's poking me.
Yeah.
So it's really that, oftentimes it's that thing that's poking you. And, unfortunately, sometimes our behaviors so radically affect others that an intervention happens.
Right.
So oftentimes, we'll find, there are times where maybe the police get involved, or, there is such an intensity to a dispute that, you know, we tend to start losing
Yeah.
things. And, sometimes, to sort of steal from the addictions world, sometimes we have to hit that bottom.
Yeah.
And again, for me, that bottom is that thing that's poking me, that I know I don't
Yeah.
like, and then trying to find a reason.
Wow. That's so powerful. So powerful. Wow, this has been a lot of strategies, but also helpful um way of just knowing. And now that you've shared this with me, now I'm actually thinking of how to protect myself and also be aware of those symptoms myself when going through mental health. And I thank both of you for joining on to this conversation. And I want to end with this last question. What are the simplest approaches to improve mental well-being? I know people get to choose a lot of things, and for me it's hike, for me it's kayaking, for me it's um going for walks and stuff like that. But what are just simplest ways of doing that? And I'm gonna start with you, Brad, and then I'm gonna end with Susan and go with that. Yeah.
I think it's pause and actually engage in life,
Mm.
because I think we run on autopilot
Oof.
and we get that focus
Mm.
and we start living for that end result,
Mm.
and we never see things. And so for me, it's that, you know, slow down, take a moment, and again, ask yourself, am I missing something?
Right.
Is there something I would like but I can't find? And then start actually being good to yourself and taking care of yourself and doing the things for you.
Like that. That's a good one. Wow. Be good to yourself. Be good to
Exactly.
yourself. Motivate yourself. Encourage yourself. Speak.
Yeah.
I think people don't encourage self love and self worth and self confidence, and that's something that it helps with mental health. It helps with
Right.
the level of that, and I think that it needs to be more of that and stuff like that. So yeah, yeah. Wow, that's good, Brad. Thank you so much, Susan.
Yeah.
I want you to close us out with this, and I know that you
Oh.
have some types of spark in this way. So
Oh, that's a nice thing
give
to
us what you,
say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just thinking as Brad was speaking, Brad's kind of an inspirational dude. Anyway, as Brad was speaking, I was looking at some strategies I use and some strategies I teach because I work with self esteem building. And what you have to do, I think, for me, is kind of look at things and count your blessings,
Mm,
have a gratitude journal.
yeah,
Um, there are negatives in everybody's life, but kind of go, okay, um, thank goodness I have this, and thank goodness I have that. I'm grateful for it.
right.
It's uh, what can I have more of in my life? Is there something from Brad's list that I should be incorporating in my own life?
Mm,
So just be willing to grow and to learn and to never be a lifelong learner and take what somebody else is doing and they're doing really well. Should I have some of that? That kind of thing.
wow. Brad Rowe, Susan Kilbride Roper, both mental health experts in different areas, but bringing together advocacy and change. I thank you both for being on the neighborhood conversations today. And I look forward to inviting you more on to future conversations that we can hear more of this into different other topics because we can be here all day talking. But not today
Yeah.
on this neighborhood conversation. But I appreciate you coming on today. It's an honor. It's an honor. Thank you so much.
It's an
Yeah.
honor to
Thank
have been
you.
asked. Thank you.
Awesome. As we continue to move forward, listening audience, I think that I would like to end with this. I want you to pause today and I want you to think, what am I grateful for? What are those things that are bringing so many blessings along my way? What are those things that are making me smile? What are the accomplishments that I've done so far that has brought me to this moment, to this minute, to this second? Think about it. Just take a pause. Thank you so much for coming on to the Neighborhood Conversations, and we'll see you at the next episode. Have a great one.
Thank you. Bye.
This podcast is funded by the Government of Nova Scotia.